You are at war with yourself and likely don't realize it. Your thoughts, beliefs, habits, and actions often sabotage you. Are they helping you overcome adversity or setting you up for failure? To win this battle, you must connect with your inner warrior. We all have a warrior within us, one that strengthens our resolve and helps us to rise to meet life's challenges. If you're just surviving rather than thriving, then it's time to embrace the warrior archetype, live the warrior ethos, and ascend. If you are a veteran, first responder, or someone looking to take charge of your life, find your tribe, and then be the hero of your own story, this podcast is for you. Join Mike Kinney and Matt Hastings, two retired U.S. Army officers who served in U.S. Army Special Operations and Army Aviation units, as they share with you optimal performance practices they learned in their time with the Military and Warriors Ascent, a 501c3 nonprofit that helps veterans and warriors with PTS.
Well, all right, everyone. Welcome to the Warriors Ascent podcast with your hosts, Mike and Matt. And we've got a special guest, my friend. And, we've talked about tribe, right, for the season by and large, right? So for your benefit, Jeff, and we'll introduce you shortly. Hey, you are the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. While we don't really hang around Jeff, I say the most because he's one of the guys that is, I'll say, instrumental in our program. He's a guy that I would consider most definitely part of my tribe. So Jeff Miner is going to cover limiting beliefs. I'll let him introduce himself, but as part of the Warriors Ascent program, Jeff brings, I'll say, a specific skill set. Look at him. He's got that wrestler look. He's that cauliflower ears, all of that. I liken him to that goofy older brother that you love that would tie you into knots if you ever made him mad. So I try never to make him mad. I try never to make him mad. No, but Jeff, we're so glad that you're here, my friend.
Yay!
And this is going to be a great episode.
Yay! I'm really horrible at that.
Tee up limiting beliefs first, but so let me start out, and then we'll go into all the introductions. Let me ask everybody. Have you ever been in a situation, whether you're about to embark on I'll say a task or an escapade or a project or whatever it might be. It could be a startup. It could be another project. It could be a race. And you're like, you begin to second guess yourself and you subvert yourself. You start thinking, who am I, to be able to do this? There are other people more successful, or I've never really been good at this. It really isn't my comfort zone, and then rather than be excited, or maybe that's the case initially, as you begin to progress and things get a little bit more difficult, all of a sudden you start making excuses, or you start doubting yourself and your abilities or your ability to adapt and grow. If anyone out there has experienced that any time in their lives, and let me say this, even the highest performing among us have experienced that. So if you think, well, that's just me, but those super high performer types, they never doubt themselves. They never have limiting beliefs. I'm here to tell you, and I think Jeff will corroborate this, that is not the case. Everyone, to some degree, has got those beliefs, and having that is an impediment to, we'll say, high performance. So Jeff's here. He's going to speak to that and hopefully alleviate that for everyone. So with that, I will shut up now, and I give you Jeff Miner. Please introduce yourself. Give us your background.
Hi, I'm Jeff Miner, and a little bit about my background is I was a wrestler. I was pretty good, like 354 now. Didn't know how to lose, but I struggled really bad with anxiety. And I would get so nervous, and I would get sick before I would wrestle. I would throw up almost every time, even against kids that I knew weren't that good. But it was just such an overwhelming process for me. But I wrestled through high school, did well, wrestled in college, went D1, did well. But I got to say, I hated the whole experience because I was anxious, I was nervous, and I hadn't dealt with a lot of my stuff along the way. Mm-hmm. So it was when I graduated, I decided I want to become the guy that I wish I would have had to talk to. And I became a therapist. And my first gig was at the Olympic Committee. I worked there working with athletes that were struggling with performance and getting in their own way and eating disorders and all kinds of different issues. And then I went on to work with professional athletes of different varieties, golf and basketball, and I continue to work with MMA fighters and performers to this date. But what I found is I've got a passion for working with people with PTSD. And part of that passion is because I struggled a lot with that myself. And I realized that's why I was so anxious. That's why I was so nervous, is I struggled with a lot of those issues as a little kid, and I never was able to deal with them. So what I've done is I've been working with Warriors Ascent, and I've learned a lot about the beliefs and how we create our own beliefs and when and where we create those beliefs. And either they're positive beliefs or they're negative beliefs, they're limiting beliefs. And most of our beliefs come from when we were children. It's not always the case, but a lot of times we're not enough for our parents. You're not good enough. You got to do this. You got to, all these different things because we're not good enough for our parents. That's a majority of them, but it goes on and on. You could have been abused as a kid. There could have been all kinds of beliefs that were created when you were young that carry you through life, and then you're still carrying those beliefs, but they're intensified once you experience more and more trauma. So it's like a lot of the beliefs that we've created for ourselves are beliefs that keep us stuck. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not nice enough. I've got to be perfect. I can't let anybody down. I can't disappoint anybody. All these beliefs came from somewhere. And I can ask you guys, do you have any of those beliefs?
I think everyone does.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely had those and struggled with them
Bingo.
throughout my life for sure.
Exactly. And so have I. So it's like we all struggle in some way with those beliefs, but what do we do with them? What we usually do is we tuck them down and we don't deal with them, and we just let them control our lives. If you're afraid of heights, just don't go in high places. If you're afraid of these different things, just don't do those. So you start avoiding life and you start avoiding interactions and all kinds of things because you're holding those down. I'm just not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't believe in me enough. And so the only way I know to deal with those is to go back and see what were they. And that's what we're going to do a little bit today. Is we're going to start with, and Matt, I'm going to pick on you today.
Okay. Absolutely.
And we're going to go through the steps that will help you to identify and learn why you're doing the behaviors you're doing. And then we're going to give you new behaviors at the end that you can do, because I'm really good at this stuff. I'm really good at helping people, but I can't say, Matt, you just need to feel better.
That's right.
It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. It's what are the behaviors that you're going to do that are going to make you feel better? That's cognitive behavioral psychology. It's basically, you can't just wish yourself to be happier.
Right.
It's like, what are you going to be doing? What are you going to be thinking? How are you going to plan that? And that's what we're going to give you at the end of this. So let's start with, we all got a limiting belief of some sort. Matt, I want you to identify one that's you've struggled with in your life and you still might be struggling with it.
I don't know. The one that came to mind is already kind of in the past because I don't do that anymore. But
Right.
Let's see. Oh, I got some stuff. I think I have some creative desires, and I feel a little bit, like imposter on that. Like I have decided I might start a small business, and it's kind of, I don't know if I really want to, if I really have what it takes.
Right.
This thing I'm making is like, I don't know if it's really good enough.
So you've got doubts. And confidence issues
Sure.
in it all around it. Let's look at, so we identified the limiting belief is maybe I don't have what it takes. I may be an imposter.
Right.
A little bit of the imposter syndrome. So now we're going to start and we're going to look back at where was the first time you ever felt like an imposter that you can remember?
The one that really sticks to me and is like a kind of a traumatic thing was we were in Kuwait training dust landings in all conditions, and I'm a brand new instructor, and it's my job to teach this. And I went out with the head instructor who taught all the instructors, qualified us, and at the end of it, he's like, all right, you're done. Go get your own aircraft and start going. And it's like, what?
Right.
I felt terrible. I'm not. Let's go do some more. And he's like, I don't have time for it. You did great. Let's go.
Right.
And so I'm thinking to myself, wow, I got to go teach this, and I don't feel comfortable myself. So, and it was the darkest of darkest nights I've ever been in. And we went out, and throughout the night, I was getting more confidence. I was on probably my 7th pilot, and a bunch of crew chiefs in the back are rotating around. And this one guy, I put him last because he was going to be the hardest guy. And I thought then I would have the most confidence and the most experience of the night, warmed up. And I kind of looked down for too long. And when I looked up, I just couldn't figure out where we were in space. And, and I come to find out we were about to crash and die.
Oh, man.
And I saw at the last second how we were and thought, I no idea how this is going to work, but I kind of did some crazy stuff and sort of flew out of this near crash, and still had to train this guy.
Oh my God.
And the worst part of it was I had a crew chief in the back that was just screaming at me, yelling at me, because he wasn't supposed to come with us on this deployment. He was supposed to be out of the Army, and the Army said, you're going on the deployment. And he's just yelling at me, and he's this big dude, way bigger than me, and I wasn't sure if he was going to beat me or what,
right.
But we kept flying. And I just remember thinking, how am I going to, we had a whole year ahead of us, we thought,
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is this going to be like? Do I even have what it takes, man?
Yeah.
Am I going to just pile one of these things up? Because a friend of mine from flight school, about 2 weeks before, had crashed and killed right there in the desert of Kuwait training. And
So that happened, and then you're brand new at your job.
well, I've been flying helicopters,
No,
right?
but I mean leading, teaching.
New at the instructor pilot game,
Right.
yeah.
And you're responsible for all these guys, and you're
Yeah.
learning on the job.
Well, yeah, because it was, we had done things at the National Training Center in California, but this was a whole new world.
Oh, yeah.
The dark of Kuwait when there was no moon in that desert, I'd never seen anything as dark as that. And it just wasn't, I'm
What
like,
was that like for you?
it was terror because I thought this was my thing, right? I thought I just had all these special skills flying helicopters, and all of a sudden I've met my match out there. And it's like, whoa, we're going to do this at night all the time for the next year, every night, and I'm thinking, this is, I don't even know if I'm going to make it, I don't know. It was pretty scary. I know that.
Yeah.
This was in the very beginning in the kind of the invasion piece. And so it was, we just didn't know what to expect. We didn't know what our living conditions were going to be. We didn't know what the enemy was going to be like. We didn't know what kind of missions we were going to fly.
And
But I knew that the environment was the most challenging I've ever seen in my life. And I've been flying since I was a little kid, all over the place. And so I thought, this is the tough one. I don't think I have what it takes to do this. And I've been writing about this lately just because, and I thought I'd kind of written about it enough, but it was one of those, like you're facing, I don't know, like you're facing your biggest enemy,
your fear.
Yeah.
You could die.
Yeah. And then it's suddenly like, oh man, I've been faking this all along. I've been like, I haven't studied enough, and I could start picking myself apart. Like all the things I didn't do this. I haven't done this. I need to pick this more up. I need to get more serious, and it's like,
at that point, you were your worst enemy.
yeah, really.
You were beating you up all the time.
Yeah.
All these expectations. I got to be perfect. I can't teach them the wrong stuff, and I got to survive.
Yeah. And the worst part was, like I kept thinking we almost wiped it out, and I just started thinking about like all the guys that were on board. And like I know that guy's wife, I know his kids, I know that person's spouse. I almost killed us all, and my therapist keeps telling me,
Yeah.
no, you weren't the one flying. It's like, yeah, but you don't understand. I was in command, and it's my fault. I was the instructor. It was everything in there was my responsibility. I'm accountable for all of it. But I wasn't the one who physically,
When you say that, what happens to you when you say it was my fault?
Yeah, I don't know. It's I get, I can feel my heart rate go up, blood pressure. I feel I don't know, the weight of it all, even back then. And just, I think it definitely changed who I was. My dad used to always tell me this. My late father was he's kind of my aviation hero, 40,000 hours. But he used to say there was old pilots and bold pilots, but there's no old and bold pilots.
Right. I get that.
Yeah. And so, I was like, oh, man, suddenly that was ringing heavily true,
Yeah.
And I think my bubble popped a little bit right there.
So what we do with limiting beliefs, this procedure, is we look at the limiting belief, we look at the experience that you just told me about, and then we look at what feelings came out of that. So did you lose confidence? Did you start doubting yourself? Did you start worrying and stressing about people around you, that I have to be responsible for you start looking at all those feelings that came out of that. And we identify those. And now we look at which ones are still alive. Like, which of your feelings are you still having as a result of that situation?
I think that, I don't know if that results, but the one thing I forgot to look at is I did do whatever I did with the aircraft to survive it, so I never gave myself credit for that, and it's like, actually my skill set was good enough.
Right.
So that I saved it, and I never gave myself credit for that. So I kind of let myself off the hook there on that one, but it took me a long time to do that. So, but currently, I think I've beaten that beast down a little bit.
Do you feel like you're enough now?
I mean, I feel like if you're not, I feel like when I'm helping, doing something, striving towards helping others, giving back to my community, then I feel like I'm enough, but if I'm a pretty lucky guy. I can sit back and do whatever I kind of choose to with my retirement and stuff. And, but I just don't want to, I want to do stuff that involves helping other people that feel the same way I have felt. And if I can tell people, I was a tough guy. I mean, I had to finally say I needed help, and it was hard. It was hard to do. And it was hard to show up to the place, even though I know I needed it. And it was, I think I was ready to go. I think this was where I realized, I went right back to that night and said to myself, these are the things I haven't done right. And now I'm going to be serious. I'm going to sit here. And then this lieutenant colonel standing up there talking. So I was at attention almost, and then it just everybody, as all the providers came through, it was just enough to listen to all of it. It was, the gravitas was just enough that I needed to hear everything and absorb it all.
Man, I'm going to take you to, we looked at those feelings that it caused. And maybe some of them are still alive a little bit, but most of them you've been able to address. There's behaviors that you're doing that are keeping those alive. That are still what behaviors, an example of that is if I had a fear of speaking, I avoid public speaking. Right. I didn't go. I didn't do these things. So it's what are these limitations? You said going, believing in yourself for your podcast, believing in yourself when you're trying to help people, giving what are the behaviors how are you limiting yourself and staying stuck in that poor me, I'm not good enough attitude?
Well, you think about this podcast, and Mike and I speak about it all the time. We're in our third season here, and it gets a little bit of traction, but we're, it's a little bit disconcerting because the topic is on point. Our organization is getting accolades, currently in the news and things like that. and yet we're not exploding like we should. And to me, it's a testimony that other people are out there, and they're not dedicating the time to themselves, or just recognizing they need that help, something like that. But just, it's kind of to see low numbers of likes or whatever on your social media stuff. It's you take a shot here and there and thinking, man, I guess I'm just not good enough. My story must just be average. I guess there's just enough people out there or other compelling things, or it just doesn't mean enough anymore in society. I don't know what it is, but it makes you feel like giving up,
Yeah.
I'll say organizationally, getting to your point, and you and I, we have these conversations all the time. I mean, the podcast just is one component of that. And we joke, next Joe Rogan, which we know is laughable. But no, we feel like we're doing a service. But Warriors Ascent is an organization. I've been doing it for 8 years. Jeff's been with me for quite some time. I'll say the preponderance of that. And as you alluded to, we've gotten some really great accolades. That article we continue to talk about, we've gotten in the news as a result of that. So we've established ourselves as, I'll say, a proven program, evidence-based, backed by science. We've got that data. We also have an abundance of, I'll say, testimonials, anecdotal, where people literally will credit the organization with having saved their lives. And I don't mean that in a cheesy, salesy way. They will say that straight up.
Yeah.
And to your point, it gets, you feel like we should be doing, not that we're not doing well, or not that we don't have great fans and great supporters. We're grateful for all of that. But I'll say this, and maybe this is, a limiting belief of mine, is that comparison. I'm like, I'm a competitor, and I'm like, okay, how come we're doing all these great things and other people, other organizations, wherever they might be, I don't see them doing the same, but monetarily, they're making more money than us. And then that's a proxy for success, but it keeps the train running, right?
Right.
Or notoriety, brand awareness. You're like, man, we legitimately are saving people's lives on a shoestring budget. And we'll get the pat on the head, or, hey, good job. And then you see all these other, and I'm like, what is wrong with us? Or what's wrong with me as the guy that leads the organization? What am I not doing? And then it's easy to go and say, well, I'm just not connected. Maybe I'll say that limiting belief is, you think, well, a lot of it is the resources that people have, the networks that they run in. And it's easy for me to go, well, I'm just not that guy. I don't run in that network. I do good work. I try to be value added. I think I'm decently talented, but I don't have the network. I don't have the relationships, and hence that's self-limiting. And, not that I'm certainly not a quitter. It's like, okay, well, then we need to cultivate those relationships, certainly. But then I'm not going to lie. There's part of me is just like, well, maybe that's not meant to be, I should say. Where, hey, if I don't know somebody, if I didn't grow up in those circles, I'm an outsider. That's going to be very hard to break in. And I could be the best guy with great pedigree and all of it. But if I don't run in those family circles, they're just like, yeah, thanks, man. And there's part of me that thinks that's the difference maker. You can be really, really good, but if you don't, it's the classic case. My father used to say this, God bless him, may he rest in peace. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And that axiom, that's a truism. I mean, a lot of times that is in fact the case. And you see it play out all the time. Very, I'll say, underwhelming individuals or organizations do quite well by virtue of the circles they run in.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's BS. But then I've got to catch myself. Then I think of Jeff Miner, and I think, what would Jeff Miner say about that? He would say, Michael, that's a limiting belief.
No, he was just going to say something a lot easier than that. Let's pretend like we're not victims. Let's just pretend.
All right.
And say, why are we being victims? You're comparing, you're worrying about not being enough, you're helping people.
That's right.
You're changing lives. If you do that to one person, then you're enough.
Yes,
it's
true.
like you guys are really, I think when you're looking at this and it's like, we should be doing, it's like, no, we are the answer to so many people, to so many challenges. And it's not the numbers and it's not any of that. It's what we bring to the table is real.
Yeah.
Right.
In Warriors Ascent, the first time I saw it, it's like, this is changing people's lives. End of story.
Right.
And we can't judge it on how many followers we're getting or how many listens we're getting. What we need to judge it on is, are we serving the number of people that we can and we want to?
And that's what I see every time we do a graduation.
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I see the difference when I come in and on Tuesday and I see them, and then at the end of the week, it's like, these are not the same people
Right.
because of something that we're doing that we figured out that's right. And I think a lot of it comes down to them understanding they're worthy. They are worthy of good stuff. They're worthy of good things. And a lot of times they're pleasers. They're worried about taking care of everybody else.
That's right.
They're first responders. We do all this for everybody else. And it can't be about that. It's got to be, those are limiting beliefs. It's like your belief is, if Mike is taking care of Mike, if Matt is taking care of Matt the best they can, I'm getting the best version of Mike. And that's the best husband. That's the best dad. That's the best worker. That's the best everything. But if we're not doing that, and that's what we're not doing, people aren't doing Warriors Ascent. They're not going into these programs and seeing that, wow, I can be healthy.
I like how you say doing, because, we said it earlier that some of them are like wishing your way through or reading a pretty cliche and saying, oh, isn't that, well, I'll just think of that every time, and it's like, no, this to me was a place I went and I found out things I actually could do. I'm in a crisis scenario, just in my head, or I just having a triggered moment for whatever reason. And I now have a way to help myself physically.
Bingo. Do you know, everybody, that I'm on a suicide board, I'm on all these panels and stuff, and what I'm really realizing is programs are out there that are bringing awareness and helping people to understand and all that, but there's not enough that are doing.
The practical steps.
Yes.
Something that's actionable.
I'm a hands-on, actionable.
Yes.
What can I
Talking
do?
to somebody and finding out their problems and listening to them and going there and giving them experiential things where they can go there about these topics. But it's like bringing awareness to it, and all this stuff out there doesn't change suicide rates.
That's
No.
right.
It's like,
You
what do
need-
we got to
you
do
need some
different?
action.
We got to talk about it. We got to do, like you said.
So let me ask this in closing. Limiting beliefs. If somebody, they do the work, they're like, all right, I can see where this belief that maybe I was developed in childhood.
Right.
How do I reprogram? What are the steps that they take?
And that's
for
beautiful,
listeners?
because that's kind of Matt, we went through, what are the behaviors that you're doing that are keeping you stuck?
Right.
Once you figure those out, then you just go to the next step. Well, then what are the behaviors that I need to do? Like when I went through mine about feeling like I was stupid and not enough, it ended up I needed to go to Toastmasters. I needed to see a therapist. I needed to go and start exercising again. I needed to, all these new behaviors that you write them down. And then if I want to change how I feel about this belief, these are the behaviors I have to do that will change that.
That's right.
So it's
And it makes it
behaviors and
very
actions.
clear and cut. And it's like, this is what I got to do to change how I feel.
It's like an op order, operation
Something like
order,
that.
something like that.
Task,
Stuff I
condition,
like,
standard, right?
Right,
Task and
exactly.
purpose. No, but no, I think that's great. Is part of it, and I think the power of some of the cognitive behavioral stuff we do is just really, I'll say, dissecting your thinking, the thoughts. And in CBT, a lot of what you're talking about is what they call distal antecedents. And we've talked about that before. It's the stuff that in childhood, those formative years that formulated your system of beliefs, some of them limiting. And what Jeff's getting at is if you do the work of determining, all right, what are the things that are holding me back? And you can identify that, you can put your finger on it. Then the next big step is, what do I need to do to remediate that,
Right.
to address it? And it needs to be action oriented. It's not just, well, I
Right.
think this thought and, well, I'm just going to change my, you
Right.
can change your thinking, but really you change your thinking through action.
I'm going to this group. I'm going to start doing yoga. I'm going to start
Right.
exercising. I'm
Eating
going
better,
to go to
sleeping better.
AA. It's some kind of behaviors that I'm going to do to change how I feel about me.
Because it's about agency, empowerment, it's taking action.
Well, and if you look at how we did Warrior Operating System, it's body, mind, soul. Because we break it into that. Because if you're not exercising, eating right, sleeping
Bingo.
right, your
Exactly.
machine's not working.
Exactly.
Your meat craft. You're driving around on this meat craft. It's not working right.
It all has to be working.
All right. So in closing, everyone, Jeff Miner, for those that like what Jeff had to say and want more of Jeff, that is the URL, right? TriumphPerformanceInstitute.com. And he's with the Triumph Performance Institute. So again, I give you Jeff Miner. Seek him out. Get on the website. Good stuff. We appreciate him. We love him at Warriors Ascent.
Yay!
Appreciate you. And he'll be on
Look
the
at
next
that.
episode with us.
Do another one. Hi, Matt Hastings here, sending a thank you for watching this episode of the Warriors Ascent podcast. You know, we strive to build a community of warriors made up of our nation's veterans and first responders. And to reach as many of those in need as possible, we need your help. Please just smash that like button and comment or share our content. Warriors Ascent is a Kansas City-based nonprofit that aids veterans and first responders with PTS. I went through this effective program and want those that are struggling to find what I found. Check us out on our website at warriorsascent.org.